My name is Magda, as you know, because you're most likely watching this on my LinkedIn. And with me is Ram, Coacharya co-founder, who you also would know if you are watching this on YouTube. Hi, Ram.
Hi. Hi, Magda.
Really good to see you. I wanted to have this chat today because you are launching a new coach training program, which is really cool and interesting and a bit different than what traditionally is done in a coach training program. So I wanted our audience to learn about that and hear about that from you to get them excited as well. So can you tell us what is this program that you are starting on June 23rd?
Okay. At one level, it's going to be an ACTP program, which is sort of the benchmark program that we offer. However, the big difference is going to be that almost all such programs focus on learning how to coach individuals. While that's probably good for a start, more and more we find in industry that there is a need for a much larger scope coaching effort, which covers the teams and groups people work in, and not just the individuals alone. And as yet, the framework of the coaching credential organizations do not cover that in full. And yet, we believe that the industry demand, the corporate demand especially, is very much for team and group coaching. The group coaching itself, I believe, is a bit of a misnomer because groups cannot be coached since they do not have a common co-created vision and emotional bonding. So when we talk about group coaching, we first work with the groups to make them into teams and then work with the teams in order to align them with the organization, which then is called systemic coaching. So essentially, the fundamental difference in this program that we hope to offer people as a value add is to train them for the future trends which see very, very clearly happening in industry, which is coaching through teams, individuals as well as mixed groups of individuals and teams and groups, and align it with the interests of the organization in a larger framework. And that's what we are hoping to do.
Okay, so it sounds like people who will enter this program, they'll learn about one-on-one work as well as how to transform a group into a team or how to align a group so they become a team and how to coach that team in the context of the larger organization. So that sounds like something, whenever I hear about systemic coaching in general, I go, oh my gosh, I wish I had known how to do this when I was managing a larger team, because it sounds like there are skills that a leader, a manager would find very, very useful. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, which is the reason why we are actually asking that people who attend this program are not merely coaches, people without actual corporate experience or working with groups and teams, but people with some amount of experience, at least about 15 odd years of experience as corporate leaders, which will add tremendous value to them because, for one thing, they're already used to working in teams. They know that just working as individuals doesn't help, but they do not have the support system today of how to coach people in teams to make it far more productive than what it is today. And also, they would be able to then enlarge what they have learned in terms of skills to apply it for groups within their company so they can become internal coaches, not only for individuals, but also for teams. So what you're saying is absolutely correct.
Okay, so it sounds like, for those of you who don't know us well enough, we do a ton of different kinds of co-training programs around the world, or well, globally, I should say, because it's all virtual, so it's not in particular locations. And those programs they're based on coaching skills and coaching competencies. So anyone who wants to become a coach should definitely take advantage of our coach training programs. But this particular program is more tailored towards people who don't necessarily want to have their own practice, but who are working within organizations and want to become more effective leaders because they are learning these coaching skills to work with their team members and their team as a whole. So people with 15 years experience would get the most value out of this program. Ram, so that's one kind of requirement, the 15 years of experience that we would like people, participants to have. Do people need to have experience in coaching before joining this program?
No, not at all. We are looking at people who are totally new to coaching, but who are aware that what coaching does and how it can help corporates. So corporate leaders with some amount of understanding of interventions like coaching, which could be facilitation, it could be other stuff. And essentially, they are looking at something that they can use in real life, which doesn't happen today. I wish there were programs like this when I was a corporate leader, because this comes from my passion in terms of having worked in the corporate space and how do I do something which actually is of practical value to people. When I coach individuals, I have found very often, however well I coach them, how much I transform them, they tend to either regress or resign from the organizations because the workforce with which they are expected to work with after the coaching has not been exposed to coaching at all. So it's a given, and many people who have experienced that know about this, that unless you really coach in some ways, the team with which a person is working as a totality, as well as the individuals as well. And the effect is going to be, it's not going to be sustained. Maybe in the short term, there could be some benefits. So first instance, yes, we do not need any kind of previous coaching experience. But we are also willing to take people who have had some coaching experience, who with additional hours can move to other credential levels as well.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't have any coaching experience, they would register for this program for 125 hours plus mentoring. But like you said, so if someone has their ACC, for example, how many hours would they register for?
Typically an ACC, I would be looking at an ACC who would like to go for the mastery level, which would be 200 hours. So totally they would need another 135 to 140 hours. And we will provide it in, along with the 125 hours, we'll make sure that they get the additional hours that they require for MCC as well. And similarly, people who want to move from PCC to mastery levels, for which they need about 75 hours, we can easily accommodate them within this program as well.
Okay, so this is a mixed level program for people with leadership experience, and doesn't matter what credential they currently have, you'll work with them to get to the next credential, which I think is really cool. And it reminds me of the program that I started with you, where you really front-loaded the coaching competencies to kind of get everyone up to speed on that. And then we had time to do lots of other things. So is this kind of how you're planning to run this program?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One is, there could be a question in some people's mind that if you are taking some people who are completely new to it and some people who are experienced, what's going to happen? We have tried this over the last about 5 or 6 years, and we have become pretty good at this. And we find actually having people who have some experience and people who do not have experience, it creates an extraordinarily powerful group where each person learns from the other. In fact, even those who have experienced learn something from the newcomers in terms of how they look at it with new eyes, as it were. And the other is, as you said, right from the very beginning, our effort is within the first 30 hours, we make sure that people are completely grounded and founded in the coaching competencies. And they are able to perform at much higher levels than what normally the credential institutions expect. And from there to move on to multiple other subjects like systemic coaching, team coaching, group coaching, supervision, self-discovery, and so on, we find is not such a difficult sort of skill set to acquire. However, at the same time, what I would like to tell all the people who are coming in is that they should be open to learning. They should be adventurous. And they should not be far too structured in the mind, this is the way that we want to do things. So they are going to work with me in terms of learning many new things. And they also need to work fairly committed in terms of as adult learning. So it's not just in a classroom, but they should be prepared to learn through work that they do outside of the classroom to be able to action learn, experiential learn, and so on. And we have found this working extremely well in batches that we have trained over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's really great when people bring in experiences from their coaching and from their workplace, because then it gives you a tangible, almost case study that you can learn from versus just theory. So I think that's really cool. So can you walk us through, we're talking about, a pretty long program. So it's 125 hours. So it's about 10 months worth of attending classes. And as with all Coacharya classes, this will be virtual via Zoom. So you will log in at the same time every week. This will be, for those of you in the US, it'll be Tuesday mornings from June 23rd. For those of you in Asia, it'll be Tuesday evenings for you on from June 23rd. So it'll be 3 hours every single week that you log in. Can you tell us about how you plan to break up that 3 hours and what's also required between classes?
Yeah, first of all, these are 3-hour sessions. We would have a short break in between, say about 15 odd minutes. And usually what we do is the first half of the program in all days, which we have found works extremely well, is to have feedback, share, especially from previous sessions, what's happening, how much of your learning happens, and then go into a certain amount of content that we need to cover. In the initial stages, it could be primarily about the coaching competencies, the skills required, and so on. And as we move further, it gets more refined, advanced level, as well as many other subjects that we want to introduce. Group coaching, team coaching, leadership, applied leadership competencies, for instance, self-discovery, psychological theories, models and techniques. So multiple other stuff which our Coacharya programs are now famous for. Our content is really huge. We have almost about 2,000 hours of content which have been certified by
2098.
2098, that's right. So it's beyond the 2020. In fact, 125 hours may seem long, but in fact, it's certainly not going to cover everything that we have on the content. So much of it will have to be sort of gone through and then questions asked. So the first half, as I said, would be in sharing feedback, evidencing what they have learned and some of the content. And usually in the second half, a part of that continues into it, but also in every session, we make it a practice to have some kind of a practice session in coaching, some kind of a role modeling, whatever an exercise that we need to do at that point in time to make it far more an experiential action rather than just listening to the trainer. People are much more absorbed interactively. So that is how the 3 hours will be spent. And it really flies because very often we don't have time. Very often we continue for another 15, 20 minutes based on the requirements, requests, as well as permission from the learners. And what we also do is in between, say after every about 8 or 9 such classes, which is about 30 hours, roughly 10 hours, 10 classes would be about 30 hours. We would conduct a few mentored sessions where people coach each other, and there are triads of coach, client, and observers, which is formed, where they practice, they mentor, they create their own records, transcripts, as well as self-assessments, because we believe in self-coaching, self-assessment, and self-mentoring as a very powerful basis for learning further. And then we start again with another, let's say for first 10 hours will be coaching foundation inputs, and then there's a break, they practice, and we move on to things like systemic coaching, team coaching, supervision, and so on. And so this is broken into about 4 or 5 modules, the 125 hours, roughly 5 into 25, I would put it that way. And the basic modules that we are working with, fundamentals of coaching, the whole team, systemic coaching, supervision, and so on as a second module. Leadership, we would like to put a lot of attention to because of the fact that we are addressing leaders who are going back into the leadership phase to practice and coach other people. Self-discovery would be the 4th. And the 5th one would be a mix of various kinds of psychological practices, which range from organizational development theories, to neurolinguistic programming, transaction analysis, appreciative inquiry, positive psychology, Jungian, Freudian psychology. I mean, these are not certificate programs in those kind of concepts, but to give people enough amount of information to motivate them to go and learn on their own. And then they come and make presentations in the class as well as in the webinars that we run practically every week now. So it's an amazingly powerful, cyclical kind of virtuous cycle of learning that happens.
And I think with you specifically, learning with you is fun because you've done so much, and you do tend to go off down some rabbit holes if people want to go down those rabbit holes. So having actually been in a class with you, I can say that it's actually a lot of fun, surprisingly, because you like to ask challenging questions and play devil's advocate and co-create what happens in the class and say, I don't know when you don't know. So I think, to me, that's kind of the biggest appeal about training with you specifically. You never know what you're going to get. You'll cover the content, but, you know, surprises abound.
Yeah, very often I don't know what we are going to get. So that's of course. So I believe that most often I learn from the learners. So all I'm there is to sort of work with them as an equal. And I think that works. So they learn something from me, I learn something from them. And so it's extremely complementary and mutual.
Yeah, we're all here to learn. We're all learning and growing together. So I will wrap things up because I think this is a good primer. This course is starting on June 23rd. I will, in the notes of these videos, once they finish, I will put a link to how to contact us, but we're at Coacharya.com. And you can always email contact@coacharya.com, or just if you're LinkedIn, just go to my profile, click the little contact button, and I'll be happy to help you out. But to make a long story short, we're doing this really cool program with Ram for leaders, people who are working with teams, who are working within organizations. And at the end of this program, you'll come out with requirements to get your coaching credential. But you'll also come out with, more importantly, I think, with very practical skills that you can take back to your team, to your organization, that will reap benefits on a long-term basis for you and for the teams that you work with. So I highly encourage those of you who are in manager and leader positions to get in touch, and I'll be more than happy to connect you with Ram for a chat to see if this program makes sense for you. We're always here. We're easy. We're nice to talk to.
Brilliant. So it's like, it makes me feel, Alice in Wonderland is my most favorite book. I still love reading it. So it is like with Ram in Adventureland, something like that. So that's what I would like to use as a title.
We should call this program Ram in Adventureland. Forget systemic coaching.
Right. Forget it.
Awesome.
It'll come on its own. No worries. Yeah.
Thanks, Ram. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Please get in touch with us, Coacharya.com, or you can always email us, contact@Coacharya.com, and we would love to have you as part of our community. Thanks.
Thank you.